Hello everyone, welcome to National Standard Examination in Junior Science 2010 Physics Solutions. Let us see question number 1. Which of the following statements is incorrect? A. If the net force on a body is 0, its velocity is constant or 0. B. If the net force on a body is 0, its acceleration is constant and non-zero. C. If the velocity of a body is constant, its acceleration is 0. D. A body may have varying velocity at a constant speed. Let us analyze the statements one by one. The first statement, if the net force on a body is 0, its acceleration is 0 from the formula F equal to ma, that is Newton's second law. As the acceleration is 0, the velocity remains constant. It is 0 if the body is initially at rest. Coming to statement B, if the net force on a body is 0, its acceleration is 0. Coming to statement C, if the velocity of a body is constant, its acceleration is 0. For example, body moving along a straight line. Coming to statement D, a body may have varying velocity at constant speed. Example is uniform circular motion. Coming to question number 2. Two forces, each of magnitude P, act on a body placed at a point O as shown in figure. The force necessary to keep the body at rest is of magnitude. See the diagram for a clarity of the forces acting on the particle. The two forces are acting at an angle 30 degrees with respect to y-axis. So if you consider the vertical component of the both forces, they come out to be P cos 30. Since these two components are in opposite directions, they cancel each other. The horizontal components of both forces is P sin 30 and P sin 30 along positive x-axis. So to cancel this force, we need a force of 2p sin 30 along negative x-axis. Two spheres having masses 10 gram and 25 gram are projected horizontally from same height with velocities v1 and v2. They fall to ground in time intervals t1 and t2 respectively. If the ratio of v1 and v2 is 1:3, then the ratio of t1 and t2 will be. As we can see, it is a case of horizontal projection from the top of a tower. The objects will follow parabolic path. The time of descent is independent of velocity of projection given by t equal to root 2h by g. Since both the spheres are projected from the same height, they will fall to the ground in the same time. So the ratio of times is 1:1. A convex lens L1 forms an image of same size as that of the object at a distance 24 cm. If the lens L1 is replaced by another convex lens L2, the image formed is magnified and erect. Therefore, the focal length of L2 is. In the case of first lens, it is given that the height of the image is equal to height of the object. From there we can say image distance is equal to object distance. This is possible only when the object is placed at the center of curvature of the lens. You know, center of curvature is at a distance double the focal length from the optic center of the lens. So the focal length of the first lens is 12 centimeters. Then the image formed by second lens, that is L2, is given to be magnified and erect. A convex lens forms erect image only when the object is placed between focal point and optic center. Since the object is at a distance 24 cm from the position of the lens, the focal length of the lens L2 should be greater than 24 cm. A wooden ball of density 0.8 gram per cc is placed in water. The ratio of volume above the water surface to that below the water surface is. You can see the diagram. The wooden ball is in equilibrium under the action of gravitational and buoyancy forces. The gravitational force, that is nothing but weight of the wooden ball, equal to mg, which can be written as volume into density into g, acceleration due to gravity. Similarly, the buoyancy force is m dash g, that is volume of the liquid displaced into density of water, which is 1 gram per cc, into g, that is acceleration due to gravity. For equilibrium, the resultant force should be 0. That means the downward gravitational force should be equal to the upward buoyancy force, from which we get the fractional volume of the ball inside water to be 0.8. So the fractional volume of ball outside the water will be 1 minus 0.8, that is 0.2. A stone is released from an elevator moving upward with an acceleration a. The acceleration of the stone after the release is. Given that the lift is moving up with an acceleration a, once the stone is released, it becomes a freely falling body. So the acceleration of the elevator does not influence the acceleration of the stone, which is still a freely falling body till it touches the lift floor. So the acceleration of the stone will be g downwards. A converging beam of light falls on a convex mirror of radius of curvature 20 cm. The point of convergence being 10 cm behind the mirror. The image formed is. It is given that the radius of curvature of the mirror is 20 cm, from which we get focal length to be 10 cm. The beam is converging at a distance of 10 cm behind the mirror, that is, it is converging at focal point. As the incident rays are falling on the principal focus or focal point, the reflected rays travel parallel to the principal axis. So the final image is formed at infinity. In the absence of atmospheric refraction, which of the following statements are correct? Both sunset and sunrise would be delayed. Both sunrise and sunset would be occurring earlier. The sunrise would be delayed and the sunset would occur earlier. The sunrise would occur earlier, but the sunset would be delayed. Due to atmospheric refraction, we get advanced sunrise and delayed sunset. In the absence of atmosphere, we get delayed sunrise and advanced sunset. You can refer to YouTube animation videos to experience the phenomena. You can see the diagram for a clear idea. When sound wave moves through air along x-axis, there is a variation in density of air in this direction. The graphical representation of this variation for two sound waves A and B is as shown. Which of the following statements is correct? Frequency of A is greater than that of B. Velocity of B is greater than that of A. Wavelength of B is greater than that of A. Loudness of A is greater than that of B. In the case of sound waves, intensity is nothing but loudness, while in the case of light waves, intensity is nothing but brightness. So here it is sound wave. So intensity of sound wave is given by the formula I equal to half rho omega square A square V, where rho is density, omega is angular frequency, A is amplitude, V is speed of the wave. From the formula we can see intensity of sound wave is directly proportional to square of amplitude provided other parameters remain constant. So from the diagram, amplitude of wave A is greater than that of B, indicating that A is louder than B. In the figure shown below, each of the lenses has a focal length of 10 cm. Therefore, the image formed by the lens combination is. Focal length of the convex lens is 10 cm. For the convex lens, apply lens formula 1 by V minus 1 by U equal to 1 by F. For convex lens, object distance is negative. So it becomes 1 by V plus 1 by U equal to 1 by F. From there we get the value of V, that is image distance, to be 20 cm. The image formed by the convex lens, same size, inverted real, acts as object for concave lens. Now for the concave lens, applying the lens formula 1 by V minus 1 by U equal to 1 by F. Here object distance is again negative and focal length is also negative. So we have finally 1 by V equal to 1 by U plus 1 by F, from which we get V, the image distance, equal to 20 by 3 cm. The image distance is less than that of the object distance, indicating that the image is smaller or diminished than the object. So the final image is virtual, inverted and diminished. A convex mirror is used as a rear view mirror of a motorcycle having a warning written on it. Objects in the mirror are nearer than they appear. The reason for this warning is. the image is diminished, the image distance is less than the focal length of the mirror, the image distance is less than the object distance, the image distance is more than the object distance. This is a day-to-day common observation which can be explained with the help of physics. We can say mirror formula 1 by V plus 1 by U equal to 1 by R, where V is image distance, U is object distance. For convex mirror, U is negative and V is positive, as well as R is positive, that is radius of curvature, thus focal length. Both of them are positive values. Applying the mirror formula, we get V equal to U plus R by UR. From the above expression, we can see that image distance is less than the object distance. While picking up a pair of eyeglasses dropped by a friend, you notice that they form an inverted image of the background and that the image is stretched horizontally as well. Your friend suffers from only myopia, only hypermetropia, only astigmatism, hypermetropia as well as astigmatism. This particular question is concerned with the defects of eye, that is myopia short sight, hypermetropia long sight, astigmatism due to which the people are not able to see horizontal and vertical lines as they are. So for the people suffering from astigmatism, the horizontal and vertical lines seem to be bent like parabola. Now let us see the observations. Inverted image is formed, so it is formed by a convex lens. Convex lens, that is a positive lens, is used for correcting hypermetropia. As the image is stretched horizontally, the lens has been taken from a cylindrical surface. Cylindrical lenses are used for correcting astigmatism. So the person is suffering from hypermetropia as well as astigmatism. A uniform wire of resistance 36 ohm is bent into a circle. A battery is connected between the points A and B as shown. The effective resistance between A and B is, see the diagram, the arc between A and B subtends an angle 60 degrees. Resistance of a wire is given by R equal to rho L by A, from which we can write R is directly proportional to L as long as area of cross section remains constant. As the battery is connected between A and B, the wire is divided into two parts connected in parallel. One is 60 degrees arc, another one is 300 degrees arc. Length of the arc is given by radius into angle. Now the resistance of the smaller part, 60 by 360, that is the angle subtended, into 36, coming out to be 6 ohm. Similarly, the resistance of the larger part comes out to be 30 ohm. Effective resistance, since the two parts are connected in parallel, R1 R2 by R1 plus R2, which comes out to be 5 ohm. In additive primary color process, which of the following is not possible? Take your time to see the color diagram properly. Red, green and blue are known as primary colors. Mixing these colors in equal proportions gives white. So R plus G plus B equal to white. Secondary colors are the result of mixing two primary colors. So from the color diagram you can see R plus G gives yellow, R plus B gives magenta and B plus G gives cyan. Now red plus cyan gives white. In the options, green plus cyan is given to be white, which is not possible. On the North Pole, when the surface of sea gets frozen due to cold weather, Eskimos can still fish by cutting a portion of ice at the surface to find water underneath. This is possible because water has low thermal conductivity, has high specific heat, has a high surface tension, shows anomalous behavior. This is definitely because of anomalous behavior of water. Water has maximum density at 4 degrees centigrade instead of 0 degrees centigrade as we generally expect. Because of this, in winter season in cold countries, when water at the surface gets frozen, it still remains in liquid form inside. At the bottom of the lake or sea, the temperature will be 4 degrees, which is sufficient for aquatic life to survive. Direct current flows through a vertical wire in downward direction. For an observer looking at the wire, the direction of magnetic field at a point between him and the wire is. The magnetic field lines around a current carrying straight conductor are in the form of concentric circles with the wire at the center. The direction of magnetic field is given by right hand rule. When the conductor is held in right hand with the thumb in the direction of current, the fingers give the direction of magnetic field. Now as the person is holding the wire, the magnetic field will be towards right as seen by the person. A number of electric bulbs of rating 220 volt 100 watt are to be connected in parallel to a 220 volt supply. If a 5 ampere fuse wire is used for this arrangement, the maximum number of bulbs that can be included in the circuit will be. Rating of each bulb 220 volt 100 watt. From there we can find the resistance of the bulb R equal to V square by P, which comes out to be 484 ohm. The supply voltage is 220 volt. Current passing through each bulb is 220 by 484 ampere. The maximum current allowed into the circuit is 5 ampere, which is the fuse wire rating. Now if the number of bulbs are in parallel, then N equal to total current by current allowed in each bulb, that is 5 by 220 by 484, which comes out to be 11. So as the number of bulbs comes out to be 11 by calculation, in practice 10 bulbs are used for safety purpose. In the circuit given below, AB is a thick copper wire and S is a switch. When the switch is closed, the effective resistance of the circuit will be. Effective resistance of the circuit when the switch is open condition is 3 plus 1 plus 2 into 2 by 2 plus 2, which comes out to be 5 ohm. When the switch is closed, the line AB offers a zero resistance path as it is a thick copper wire. The current flows through 3 ohms resistance and the wire AB, so the effective resistance of the circuit is 3 ohm. In figure 1, ammeter reads I1 and voltmeter reads V1. Similarly, in figure 2, ammeter reads I2 while voltmeter reads V2. Then which of the following statements is correct? Take some time to go through the circuit diagrams carefully. Then you can see I1 current through series combination of resistors, V1 voltage drop across series combination of resistors. I1 equal to E by small r plus R1 plus R2, while V1 equal to I1 of R1 plus R2 as per Ohm's law. Now I2 current through parallel combination of resistors, V2 voltage drop across parallel combination of resistors. We can see I2 is E by small r plus R1 R2 by R1 plus R2, and V2 is I2 of R1 R2 by R1 plus R2. By comparing I1 and V1 values, we can easily see that V1 is greater than V2 and I1 is less than I2. The latent heat of fusion of a solid is the quantity of heat in joules required to convert 1 milligram of solid to liquid without any change in temperature, 1 gram of solid to liquid without any change in temperature, 100 grams of solid to liquid without any change in temperature, 1000 gram of solid to liquid without any change in temperature. This is simply the definition of latent heat of fusion of a solid. Joule is the SI unit of heat energy, so the definition is in SI units. Latent heat of fusion of a solid is defined as the quantity of heat required to convert 1 kg, that is 1000 grams of solid, into liquid state without any change in temperature. The temperature remains constant because the heat supplied to the solid during melting or fusion will be utilized to increase the distance between the molecules, thus increasing the potential energy. So the latent heat given by the formula L equal to delta Q by M, that is measured in joule per kg in SI.